Hey guys, tonight we will drift into lantern-lit Kyoto, moving through a Heian light so soft it feels like silk warmed by breath. You stand at the edge of a quiet lane where paper windows glow like small moons, and temple bells pour slow silver into the air. The river's near, carrying cedar coolness and the easy gossip of reeds, and the houses lean together like old friends whispering bedtime stories. Tiny reality check before we get too cozy. You probably won't survive this level of calm. Your eyelids will clock out and leave you snoring like a distant drum. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And I'd love to know where you're listening from tonight. Drop your city and local time in the comments so this little night market can stretch around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step forward, and the lanterns lead you in. Their bellies are warm with flame, ribbed with bamboo, skinned with paper brushed by careful hands. A gate bell's size once, a tone that smooths the street the way a palm smooths lemon. The night edits everything into soft ellipses, the curve of a stall roof, the gleam along a lacquer rim, the quick glimmer of fish in a wooden tub. A moth makes 3 tidy circles and decides to remain a moth. Excellent life choices. Your sandals find the planks of a small bridge, and a mild tuck, tuck, tuck answers back, a sleepy heartbeat beneath your feet. Lantern light combs the lane and parts it like hair. On the left, scallions lie like green calligraphy. On the right, skeins of silk spill gently over a tray. Beyond them, a stack of straw zori waits, modest as folded hands. The river breathes beside you, carrying a taste of stone and a whisper of pine. Candles float near the bank, stars that have chosen water over sky tonight. You keep your pace unhurried, the speed of a yawn you haven't quite committed to. The market hums in overlapping lullabies, ladles meeting bowls, sandals skimming wood, a seller singing prices in a tune with no sharp corners. You pass a doorway where shoji glow like custard. Someone inside plucks a koto string and lets the note hang, unfinished and perfect. 2 stools keep watch at the lane mouth, guardians of the humble sort, tops worn to river pebble smoothness. You touch the nearer one and feel cool grain. Paper lanterns hang in pairs, waves and cranes, pine and moon. They turn slowly in the breeze, a gallery curated by wind. One lantern has a tiny fish painted so loosely it seems to swim when the flame flickers. When it faces you, it gives a conspiratorial wink, as if to say, yes, you're in the right story. A potter tips a bowl. Inside, the glaze holds the color of deep pools at dusk. A spice seller cracks a jar, and the lane warms with ginger and citrus. You breathe, and the night nods back. You notice the courtesy of the place, the way voices stay wrapped in cloth, the way eyes smile from behind sleeves, the way bows soften. A pair of sisters carry a tray between them, steps aligned like moon phases. A cat patrols the fish barge with the slow certainty of a seasoned official. Upon seeing you, it approves your paperwork and continues on. A broom sighs across stone. Oil whispers up a wick and catches with a patient yes. The bell hushes again, softer now, as if the city is tucking in the rooftops. The moon slides between eaves and lays a pale stripe along your sleeve. At a corner near the river, cedar branches lean over the lane and release a few needles that land like commas in the night sentence. You pause beneath the green shade and listen for the next clause. It comes as a breeze that lifts your hair, sets the lanterns to small, pleased nods, and brings the faintest echo of distant drum practice. You let the market hold you the way cupped hands hold warm tea. Every detail agrees to be gentle. The slant of a roof, the tilt of a bucket, the murmur that might be about prices or poems. Lanterns continue their patient choreography, leading you deeper, promising nothing more dramatic than comfort and a place to belong. Ahead, the lane bends toward a cluster of even softer lights and a warmth that smells like barley and straw mats. You follow the lanterns, trusting their tiny suns, and the night makes a little more room for you, as if you were expected all along.
The softer lights gather like a handful of quiet coins, and from behind a curtain of reed blinds a figure appears, thin as a drawn line, haloed by a paper moon he holds carefully at shoulder height. He isn't much older than a news story, perhaps 14 summers, hair tied in a neat knot that leans a little left as if listening. The lantern he carries is small, ribs of bamboo revealed in the warm belly, inked with a single pine bough that seems to sway when you breathe. He bows, not too deep, just enough to keep the flame polite, and the little moon bows with him. You bow back, and the lane receives the exchange with a satisfied hush, like tatami accepting quietly placed cups. You tell him the night is very well behaved, and he blushes in the glow he himself tends. Koma, he offers, like a little spinning top, though he promises not to spin you anywhere you don't wish to go. He gestures for your pace to match his, the deliberate rhythm of someone trained to keep a flame fed with air but never bullied by wind. Before the curfew drifts over the rooftops, he says, tapping the rim lightly, we can make a sleepy loop. The watch bell is kind to those who walk kindly. You agree to be terribly kind. You even promise to scold no moths, and he nods as if you have signed an important document. He moves a half step ahead, shepherding light like a shy animal. When the breeze leans in, he tilts the lantern. When the breeze sulks, he lifts it to breathe. The folded sleeve of his kimono curls around the paper like a guardian hand, and the flame answers with a steady tea kettle hum. Koma lists the rules he is learning. Do not carry flame under low thatch. Do not hurry. Keep the wick trimmed so its whisper stays even. Do not chase shadows because they are faster than you. You remember the determined moth from earlier and hope it has earned a tiny diploma. Our teacher says the night is a scroll, and we are only the brush that follows its mood. He leads you past a family arranging pickled plums into small pyramids, the fruit shining like patient planets. The mother slips you a sample as if she were sharing a minor treasure, salty, sour, a wakeful kiss for a drowsy tongue. Koma narrates softly, this stall rents umbrellas made from oiled paper. That corner sells writing brushes bound with deer hair. Here a carpenter offers short wooden pillows that promise stubborn dreams and straight necks. He speaks as if reading from a scroll only he can see, but every sentence ends with a small smile toward the flame, the way a good storyteller thanks the fire for paying attention. At the bridge post where you tapped earlier, he pauses and touches the wood as if grating its calm. This beam is polite. It remembers feet. A cat appears, quite possibly the same river official from before, and inspects Koma's lantern with regulatory gravity. Satisfied, the cat rubs once against your ankle and files a favorable report with its tail. Koma bows to the auditor, and the lantern winks a warm footnote on the plank. The apprentice's duties, he explains, include guiding late vendors safely to the last alley, coaxing flames from tea-house doors to travel together like cousins, and walking guests who seem new to this river-silvered city. He lowers his voice to confess that he likes the last part best, because new eyes make old corners blush. You admit you are very new indeed, and he receives this like a sworn oath. We will visit the places that yawn most beautifully, he decides, and your shoulders relax as if they have been given a pillow. Under cedar shade, Koma invites you to look closely at the lantern itself. The paper, washi, shows fine threads when lifted just so. Tiny rivers live in its skin, a quiet geography of fibers. He explains how oil from camellia or rapeseed carries a softer light than tallow, how the wick is rolled rather than braided so it doesn't hiss in damp air, how a thumb on the rim steadies everything without scolding the flame. He holds the lantern between you like a shared bowl of soup. For a moment, you feel the warm breath of the light on your knuckles, and it feels like being trusted. Around a corner, a tea-house auntie waves at Koma as if he were her own stray spark. She tells him he walks like a monk rehearsing a lullaby and beckons you both toward a bench that smells of straw and soy. Koma demurs, he's on duty, but she tucks a small cup in your hand anyway. Barley tea roasted dark, edges like toasted bread. The cup warms your fingers, then your throat, then you're quiet. Koma sips only steam, stealing comfort without leaving fingerprints, and the auntie permits this larceny because it is the courteous kind. As you rise, he points out festival banners folded high under the eaves, tomorrow's color sleeping. If the clouds behave, there will be lanterns on the river, cranes, moon, pine, the same company as your walk. He has noticed the motifs you admired, perhaps the winking fish too. He guides you past a stall where a boy paints characters on fans, so slowly that the strokes seem to dream themselves into place. Koma lifts his lantern to dry the wet ink. The boy nods thanks without stopping, and the characters gleam like wet pebbles in the glow. The curfew, Koma explains, isn't a wall so much as a quilt. The bell doesn't slam, it settles. Gates float down, shutters find their hooks, voices put on slippers. You glance up to the rooftops where the night has begun to drape its darker cloth, corners rounding, stars unbuttoning one by one. Koma checks the horizon the way sailors check a tide. "We have a little time," he murmurs. "Enough for a circle that returns you wiser and still awake, barely." You privately accept the peril of being only barely awake. He tests your steps on a slick patch, catching your sleeve with a discretion that feels like breath rather than touch. Wet stone, he notes, tricky as a poet's metaphor. You both pretend this near skidding was part of a rehearsed dance. Bells downriver count fewer things now. A drummer off to the left practices 2 beats, rests 3, repeats, a pocket of patience you slide into and carry along. The rhythm settles inside your ribs like a tame bird and keeps time for the next few breaths. Koma wants to show you where the paper is made and where the oils are pressed, but first he makes a small map of kindness. This corner is safe when rain turns sideways. This awning leaks unless bribed with a broom. This family pretends to haggle, so bow twice and accept their first price to save them the trouble. His lantern writes gold annotations along the lane. He belongs to the market not by ownership, but by caretaking, by the soft policies of warmth. You feel yourself issued a temporary citizenship of the night. When the wind slips its cool hand between the houses, Koma reshapes the world with his sleeve, turning the lantern inward. The flame steadies, a quiet heartbeat that doesn't mind being watched. He glances at the slim bronze of a bell through wooden slats and nods. "We will turn at the shrine," he promises, "and if the watchman frowns, I'll tell him you're a visiting constellation." He says it deadpan, but the corners of his mouth betray him, and you discover Heian humor is as dry as good tea and just as warming. Your pace matches his now. The market rearranges itself around this shared tempo, longer shadows, slower conversations, a seller counting coins with the unhurried accuracy of sleep. You and Koma pass the two stools, keeping their modest vigil. You pat another one again because friendships matter. The lantern's painted pine answers the real cedar overhead, ink shadow replying to living shade, and the city's breath holds long enough for you to hear your own. Ahead, where the lane bends, the shrine's vermilion peeks through like the corner of a careful smile, and Koma's lantern draws you onward as if you were already part of its flame.
You don't quite make it to the shrine before a familiar hand flutters from a doorway, the tea house auntie who earlier slipped steam into your palms. She crooks one finger, a soft summons that even the wind obeys, and Koma tilts his lantern in quick agreement. The reed blinds lift and fall like eyelids, and a little bell on the door rings not so much welcome as of course. You slide your sandals onto the wooden step and step up onto tatami that sighs like fields in summer. The room smells of straw mats, roasted grain, and the well-behaved ghost of soy. Your knees find the comfortable angle of someone who meant to sit just this way all along. Congratulations, you're suddenly fluent in floor. Auntie nudges a low brazier closer. The kettle there isn't in a hurry. It breathes a whisper rather than a boil, as if it understands tonight's assignment is calm. She arranges cups that look shy about being so small, and then she wraps her hands around yours to press warmth into your fingers, a practical blessing that says, without words, stay as long as staying takes. Koma kneels a little to your left, lamp between you, sleeve curled into a neat windbreak like a house built for one tiny sun. The flame approves and sits up straighter. "Barley first," Auntie declares, which is not a suggestion. She pours a roasted ribbon that smells like toasted crusts and rain on wood. Steam rises and tickles your upper lip. Your first sip tastes like bread remembering it was grass. The second sip finds a hint of nut, a quiet sweetness. It's the kind of drink that never elbows anyone at a party, yet somehow ends up introducing everyone to everyone. You hold the cup with both hands the way Koma did with the lantern, and Auntie nods to the etiquette, satisfied that civilization has not entirely fallen. From the back room comes a little tumble of laughter, the kind that falls into a pillow instead of bouncing off the walls. Auntie grins. "The rice cracker man tells stories he doesn't sell," she says, and produces a bamboo tray of thin, blistered rounds. Their edges shine with a brush of soy. She taps one, and it answers with a gentle crack you feel more than hear, which is how you know it was made by someone who trusts heat. You taste salt, smoke, and patience. Koma pretends to reconsider his vow of duty for 3 heartbeats, then takes the smallest corner he can credibly call a taste. The tea house is a scrapbook of soft things. A scroll with a single brushstroke, thick to thin, hangs like a captured exhale. A shelf shelters bowls glazed in river colors. On the far wall, a festival banner naps, its blues dimmed to bedtime. Auntie's voice knits the room together with homey thread, how the river's lanterns will float like unspooled constellations if the wind behaves, how the fisherman 3 stalls down swears carp understand compliments, and how ginger pickles cure not only colds but dishonest memories. You let her talk do the lifting for a while, and everything inside you sets down whatever it was carrying. Coma, all lantern craft, even at rest, trims the wick with a practiced pinch you barely notice. Auntie spots it anyway and tuts fondly. "Don't make the flame shy," she says, moving a small screen to help. "It sings better when not stared at." Then she turns to you with the seriousness of a priest and leans in conspiratorially. "Important secret. When you hold the cup, be sure the painted mark looks away. That way, the best face of the cup watches the room. You rotate obediently. The cup seems relieved to be spared your close-up, which, fair, is probably not its best angle at this time of night. Rain thinks about existing and then commits. A slow, polite sprinkle taps the eaves. The reed blinds tremble with every raindrop's shy handshake. Auntie lowers one slat, and the room becomes even more of itself, the kind of warm where your shoulders forget their job. She blakes out pickled plums cut into tiny crescent moons and a dish of sesame slick greens that have memorized the river's bend. Between bites, she gives you a recipe disguised as gossip. Soak the barley until it sighs, toast until it remembers sun, pour water as if you were apologizing to it for being hot. You nod like an apprentice who will absolutely not mess this up and definitely owns a kettle that behaves. The cat auditor chooses that moment to clock in, slipping under the blind with professional gravity. It inspects the brazier, then the lantern, then your aura. Auntie scratches the exact square inch that persuades the cat it invented comfort. A saucer appears as if by magic, really from beneath the counter, and receives a respectful splash of barley tea. Coma bows to the inspector. The cat pretends this is normal before curling around your ankle, thereby passing the compliance check with distinction. Auntie tells a little night market parable. Once, a lantern forgot its oil but remembered its manners, and the watchman lent it a thumb of flame from his pipe. Since then, the lanterns bow to the watch bell, and the bell answers, and no one feels lonely on the way home. Stories keep street corners warm, she says, topping up your cup with a pour that tastes like a blanket. Coma glances into his oil pot just long enough to plant a seed of future prudence. Auntie notices and flicks her eyes toward a shelf where a small bottle of camellia oil waits like a quiet promise. If needed, her look says, not before. The rain thickens one notch and then, as if embarrassed by its own ambition, softens again. Through slats you see umbrella frames bloom and glide, the market adjusting itself without complaint. Someone knocks mud from a sandal with a rhythm that could be a lullaby if you were willing. Spoiler, you are. Auntie demonstrates how to fold a fan so it answers wind rather than argues, a gesture Coma mirrors with his sleeve around the lantern. You follow along with your empty hand, discover the choreography of less, smaller movements, quieter fixes, industry that doesn't raise its voice. When your cup cools, Auntie replaces it with one that appears to have been training for this role all its life. "Trade up," she murmurs. She tucks a tiny sachet into your sleeve. Roasted barley for later, marked with a pine stamp, cousins with the one painted on Coma's lantern, for when the night pretends to be longer than it is. You promise to keep it until it tells you not to, which earns a satisfied grunt and the smallest bow. The kettle breathes, the rain writes in soft dots, the cat's tail draws commas in the air, and the room arrives at that part of evening that feels like the page after the last page, when the story keeps going but no one needs proof. Coma finally rises, regrets it, and rises anyway. Duty is good-natured but persistent. Auntie untangles a lock of hair from your forehead with the nonchalance of someone rearranging a flower in a vase. She advises, "Go see the river. Take the slow lanes. Let the puddles win." She taps the lantern's rim. "And bring this child back before it tells jokes." You bow. Koma bows. The flame bows in solidarity. Sandals again, wood step again, the snug ring of the little bell again. The reed blinds settle behind you like closed lashes. Outside, the market has acquired a new shine, every board and stone a shade deeper. The tea's warmth lingers in your chest like an easy song. Koma lifts the lantern, now a touch steadier, and the path to the silk stalls folds open as though it was waiting for your feet to remember it.
The lane parts like silk itself, and there it is, a long, low arcade where bolts of fabric lean in shy diagonals, their ends tucked like sleeping birds. Lantern light turns the weaves into ponds, rippled crepe like wind-kissed water, smooth satin like moon laid flat, gauzy lengths that breathe when you do. Koma tips his lantern to keep the flame respectful, and the painted pine on its paper skin bows to the real patterns before you. The rain has quieted into a rumour. A single drip ticks from an awning, a metronome for unhurried shopping. You slide your fingers along a sample square, the way you'd pet a polite cloud. It answers with hush instead of squeak. You don't need a robe, obviously, but you need this moment of fabric explaining night in texture. The silk merchant couple watch you with the tender pride of gardeners. He has a beard that means business. She has eyes that mean bedtime stories. Their daughter, a comet of neat braids, fans the bolts so colours bloom. Plum, watermint, barley gold, persimmon remembered from autumns that promised themselves carefully. She holds one cloth up to the lantern and does not need to say, "See how it drinks light without getting drunk." The edges turn to riverbanks. Somewhere a koto string in a neighbouring room imitates this quiet and gives up halfway, satisfied. Koma's lantern keeps the beat, steady as a heart that trusts its company. Beyond the silk, a different music. Brush scratch, pause, brush scratch. You follow the sound to a small table under a swaying banner inked with 3 sleepy cranes. A poet, with sleeves like sails, grinds ink on a stone, adding water in thumbfuls so small you can measure them with a breath. Strips of washi wait like patient minnows. 2 crackers for a verse, the sign suggests, calligraphy slung in a friendly tilt. Or 1 really good verse for 3. You appreciate honest pricing. Koma coughs into his sleeve, which an apprentice translates to, "It would be a shame if someone didn't write a poem right now." The poet offers you the brush with a nod that assumes you have things to say. Oh dear, your last committed handwriting may have resembled a crab learning to dance. Still, the ink smells of pine soot and rain, and the stone wears down with such dignified sighs that your hand wants to join the conversation. Koma lifts the lantern to make a small theatre of light, shielding the stage with his sleeve. The poet murmurs a mini-lesson. Hold the brush like a bird you intend to love. Breathe before the downstroke. Let the white speak too. You think of the tea-house auntie and her rule about cups and faces, and realize everything tonight is secretly about courtesy. You try a 575 that technically isn't invented yet here, but time travel has already broken several minor laws, including extreme coziness. The brush obeys you more than you expected, less than you'd like. Your river leans a bit. Your moon looks suspiciously like a dumpling. The poet grins and writes a gentle revision underneath. Same meaning, neater shoes. He seals it with a red stamp that appears to have woken from an excellent nap. You buy crackers, I buy your future confidence, he says, which is a bargain because your confidence has been on seasonal sale. While the ink breathes, a gust nudges the banner and the paper strip flutters toward a bolt of pale silk, the color of a cloud too shy to be sunrise. You reach out, late. Coma's sleeve swoops in, airy and precise, catching the poem an inch from a blot that would have made the silk bawl politely. The silk wife clicks her tongue once, relief and approval braided together. She plucks a pinch of blotting sand from a small dish and sprinkles it over your wet characters like a blessing. "Saved by apprenticeship," she says, giving Coma a look that adds another stripe to his invisible sash. You add cape work to his list of skills. Crisis averted, you trade your imperfect verse for a paper sleeve of rice crackers painted with soy gloss. The poet bites into one and declares the meter crunchy. He points a brush at a string hung between poles where many poems flutter in the lantern breeze. Love notes to rain, gossip about carp, a haiku that accidentally invents itself and apologizes later. One reads, in the poet's crisp hand, "Lantern learns patience, moth earns night school diploma. Both pass with honors." You recognize his humor from the sign. The market shares a sense of comedy that lets laughter nap. Coma, having just saved silk, allows himself to nerd out about ink. He shows the stone's shallow lake, the ridge where soot meets water, the way the brush drinks and then wrings itself out obediently. He draws a tiny demonstration character, light, so thin it could fall through a crack and land unbroken. The poet watches, approving a colleague in flame. When paper is good, it forgives. When ink is good, it remembers. You think of your barley sachet tucked in your sleeve and how small, forgiving objects have escorted you since the tea house. At the next stall, an old man paints poems directly onto fans and then trades them for pickles. He has arranged his pickles in military formation, cucumbers, daikon, plums, each platoon glossy with self-respect. He lifts a fan, and your earlier poem, post-rescue, pre-sandshake, becomes a breeze that smells like cedar and bragging carp. "Write me your weather," he says, and you answer, "Soft rain, later stories." He paints those 4 words in a style you swear you can hear. The payment, 2 slices of ginger, sweet with mercy. Commerce, tonight, is made of verbs and condiments. The market's quiet circus continues, a silk daughter teaching a lantern moth which colors flatter it. All. A calligrapher mending a frayed brush with tenderness usually reserved for friends. A child counting syllables on fingers while chewing a cracker 3 beats long. You shoulder bump the cat auditor as it inspects a bolt's hem. It marks the fabric excellent for napping by falling asleep partly on it. The silk wife shakes her beard as if ringing a very soft bell in agreement. A drizzle murmurs back on for a moment, and the poets shift their table deeper under the awning with a grace that says, "Rehearsal." Coma steps with them, lantern steady, light sliding along bowls and stones like a quiet dog happily underfoot. A small boy misjudges the gutter and splashes his sandal, nothing tragic, and a seller flips a board to bridge the streamlet, making a path from syllable to syllable. The board knocks a rhythm you could write to. The poet does quickly, and pins his new line beside yours. We are all collaborators tonight. Wood, water, soot, hands. The silk wife wraps a narrow length of leftover ribbon around your wrist, a temporary river you're allowed to take. She says, "For luck, so words do not slip." The ribbon has the cool of shade and the kindness of something that looks more expensive than it is. You bow, she bows, Coma shadows the flame as if bowing too. Beyond the last bolt, a gap in the eaves shows a leaning wedge of vermilion. The torii waits around the bend, its silhouette already soothing. The poet lifts his brush in farewell, writing in the air this time, easy loops that do not need paper. Lanterns nod like elders who have seen good evenings and recognize another. Coma glances toward the river you can almost hear,
and with your borrowed ribbon whispering at your wrist, you follow the soft scratch of syllables into deeper hush.
Vermilion steps out of the dark like a quiet exclamation. The Tory stands with its feet in damp earth and its lintel sipping moonlight, and for a breath the market narrows to this one doorway that isn't really a door. Koma lowers his lantern, and the painted pine on the paper becomes a deeper red, as if saluting. You pass beneath, and the sound of rain and talk thins, as though the gate asks everything loud to put on socks. Willow branches lean to listen. Somewhere the river rolls its shoulders and remembers that it has stones. Koma gestures toward a basin tucked beneath a small roof. A ladle waits like a simple spell. Rinse, not scrub, he whispers, as if scolding your overachieving instincts. Right hand, left hand, lip of the ladle tilted like a modest bow. He shows, you follow, and the water tastes faintly of copper and evening. A moth inspects the ritual and approves by not flying into your nose. You set the ladle back exactly where it wishes to live and breathe, the cedar breath of the shrine. 2 bows, 2 claps soft as folding paper. 1 bow, your palms catch and release the night, as if weighing it for sleeping. Lanterns ride the Kamo in small fleets, paper ships with tamely burning hearts, drifting like unrolled sentences. The river keeps the punctuation sensible. Riffle, hush, riffle. A woman with a basket of candle cups sits under the eaves with her knees together like bookends. She has the calm of someone who keeps an alphabet of flames. Koma lifts his lantern so its light can interview her wares, and she offers you a cup and a sliver of charcoal to write a wish. Compliment the carp, she adds, practical as a broom. They know the currents. Auntie did warn you about their vanity. You try to compose something that will flatter fish and not embarrass you later. Your handwriting still negotiates with gravity, but tonight the river is generous. You write, on the thin wood lid, float kindly. Find someone who needs sleep more than I do. Koma peeks, hides a grin, and adds a dot in the corner. His secret for luck, he says, though he won't explain what the dot is lucky at. The woman tucks your note under the rim and pushes the little ship into the current with 2 fingers that have never hurried anything. It joins the slow caravan, wobbling once like a very polite drunk, then straightening into purpose. You bow to a candle. It bows back because that's just how fire behaves when watched kindly. Below the slope, fishermen squat in the lantern silt, nets looped like noodles. Their hats are dark crescents in the glow. You ease down the bank on stones that have earned everyone's respect by being slightly treacherous, and Koma shadows you with light the way a friend shades your eyes. Evening, one man whispers as if language might startle the river. He compliments a carp in the tone you would use to praise a child's excellent posture. Strong back, good scales, he murmurs toward the water, and the net in his hands lightens as if words could untie knots. Maybe they can tonight. He tells you the trick of lucky carp. You do not beg, you do not bargain. You admire. The river shares more with listeners, he says, easing the mesh. He points at your wrist. That ribbon is river-colored. You explain its silk-wife origin, and his teeth show in a smile that has met many moons. He fingers in his pouch and produces a paper fish, hand-cut, spine scored so it can arch. He balances it on your palm. For the lantern, he decides, so flame remembers how to breathe like water. The paper fish goes into Koma's lantern like a tiny resident artist. The flame approves with a rounder hum. Rain faintly threads the air again, small stitches that barely catch the skin. Koma tilts the lantern, and you notice the oil's meniscus lower than before, a crescent smile that is not entirely confident. He notices you noticing, and with the gravity of a tea ceremony, trims the wick the smallest amount a wick can be trimmed while still feeling wanted. After the shrine, he promises, we'll find the press, meaning the shop where oils sit in patient rows. His sleeve shelters the flame from a contrary gust, apprentice choreography that now feels like part of your own pulse. Upstream, a bell tries one note and then changes its mind. Downstream, a child releases a lantern and claps once, not ritual, just joy. And the clap runs across the water like a frog, then dissolves politely. The woman with candle cups eyes your expression and offers you a pinch of salt to flick at the river for clear dreams. You do, and immediately feel extremely capable of sleeping like a dignitary. Koma, unwilling to be caught without a contribution, produces the tiniest rice cracker from the sleeve you forgot he had, and tosses a crumb in with the holy air of someone feeding temple pigeons. It lands on a ripple with a soft plip. Somewhere, a carp feels seen. You walk the river path where the willows comb the air. The tory's shadow lays itself long as a ribbon, echoing the silk at your wrist. You line them up for a step just to see if the world allows coordination. It does, generously. On the opposite bank, two students of mischief rehearsing drum patterns trade call and response, their sticks dropping feathers of sound. Between beats, frogs test notes, undecided about forming a choir. Koma names the shrines on either side the way sailors name stars, then checks the watch-bell sky with his lantern hand and the oil pot with the other. Still time, he concludes, but the flame's hunger adds a quiet underline. The fisherman with the easy smile leans close enough for his whisper to feel like an old scarf. He shares a fake secret in a real tone. If you tell the carp you're about to leave, they'll nudge your wish faster to the bend. You test it, whispering a polite farewell to a countless silver spines, and look at that, your candle picks up a private breeze and glides ahead as if a fin has said, "Right this way." You promise, out loud, to return the compliment someday to a carp you'll meet far from here, in a pond that thinks it's a mirror. The river pretends not to blush. Beneath the next torii, the ground turns to packed sand that remembers festivals. Footprints ghost the surface, heavy, light, hopping, deliberate. Koma points at a parallel grooves, wheels from a cart that must have carried paper and oil earlier. "We are already on the right path," he says, which is the sort of sentence that lets bones relax. He reaches into your sleeve like a magician and taps the barley sachet Auntie gave you. "Keep," he commands, teasing. "Emergency rations. For courage!" You assure him the sachet plans to live a long and honorable life. A watchman crests the path, robes damp, face like a cliff that has learned to smile at moss. He considers you, the apprentice, the lantern, the river. His frown is the performative kind, like a gate testing its hinges. Koma bows, and the paper fish inside the lantern casts a tiny swimming shadow that accidentally charms everyone. The watchman's eyebrows concede defeat, and he tips his head toward the market. Time is moving, quilts are being pulled up. "After the drums," he murmurs, not forbidding, but folding the night's map for you. A generous cartography.
As you turn from the water, you glance back once more at the drifting lights. Your little ship has found a cluster and travels in company. Somewhere, a carp has enjoyed a very flattering evening. The Tory frames the scene as if promising to remember it on your behalf. Koma lifts the lantern, and the flame agrees to keep being brave for a while. Beyond the willows, the market pulls you on with a sound like silk pages turning. There, behind the next bend, drums are practicing their manners, and a row of masks watches with pleased, painted composure.
The drums find you before you find them. Soft pulse first, then padded thumps that travel under the boards and into your bones as politely as a cat crossing a threshold. You and Koma follow the sound along a lane where painted masks hang from cords like moons practicing faces. A fox looks amused at being carved into wisdom. A lion mask tries for fierce and lands on friendly. A courtier's pale oval wears eyebrows that could rule empires of tea etiquette. The stall-keeper taps a tiny hand drum, testing the night the way a sleepy doctor tests a wrist. Gently, with the certainty that everything will survive till morning. Koma tips his lantern toward a fox with russet strokes and a grin that clearly knows where the good snacks are. Try, he suggests, and the fox, of course, agrees. The strap slides comfortable as a ribbon. The world narrows into the friendly tunnel of a new face. Your breath warms the wood. Its carved nose edits the night into neater lines. The stall-keeper claps his palms softly, approval on mute, and angles the lantern so the painted whiskers seem to twitch when you speak. Somewhere behind you, the river clears its throat and decides to hum along. The square opens just beyond, rimmed by awnings beaded with rain. Students kneel at low taiko, barrels bound with rope, skins stretched to a tone that could persuade a roof to stay calm in wind. They take turns like good cousins. 2 strokes, space, 3 strokes, longer breath. Koma places the lantern at your shoulder, sleeve lifted against the little breeze that drums always invent. The paper fish inside your lamp performs a dignified wag, and the flame hums as if promising not to show off. You borrow the rhythm and let your steps learn to breathe between sounds. Fireflies drift from the shrubs, stitching green thread through dusk's hem. They are unhurried seamstresses, and before long the practice ground wears a soft collar of tiny stars. A teacher in indigo lifts a bamboo pointer, not for striking, but for pointing at silence. He taps the floor once, attention without alarm. He says, "Listen to the rests," and you realize he is speaking to you too. You lower your fox head and let the spaces widen until you could store a whole nap in there without spilling. The masks along the stall ridge nod their painted approval, which is unsettling only if you aren't already a fox. The stall-keeper presses a light practice mallet into your hand, the padded sort that would never frighten sleep. Fox learns heartbeat, he smiles, guiding you to a spare drum. You try the pattern the students are trading. Dum, dum, breathe, dum-dum, breathe, longer breathe. Your first dum comes out a little ambitious, as if it drank 3 compliments by the river. Your second dum agrees to be modest. The rests are perfect. They know exactly what to do without you. Koma nods, pleased, and the paperfish becomes suddenly aerodynamic, as if it too understands tempo. Of course you are still wearing a fox. Between dum and dum-dum, you tilt your head and the square becomes a meadow of scents. Cedar smoke simmering from a brazier, the shy honey of split bamboo,
the wet stone perfume of a gutter learning to be a rill. Umbrellas negotiate with the rain in tiny syllables. The strap on your mask loosens half a thought. A gentlemanly breeze teases it, and Coma, ever apprentice, steps in with a knot practiced on 10,000 lantern cords. "Fox will not escape on my shift," he murmurs. The flame answers with a proud little nod, and then, you think, a yawn. The teacher lets the students rest and invites you to tap alone. This is scandalously generous, so you try not to perform gratitude too loudly. Dum, dum, listen, dum-dum. The drum answers like a door greeting a familiar knock. Around the square, masks watch from their Perlin gallery. They seem to approve a creature who is obviously new at this, but politely committed. A child copies your fox tilt behind a sleeve, and then hides in triumph when you wag an ear, an invented feature the mask did not know it possessed until now. A gust ambles through the practice and tries on everyone's sleeves. The lantern flame leans back with a surprised, "Oh," then composes itself. Coma lowers the lamp and curls his arm around it. Your next dum lands like an anchor lightly set. He flicks his eyes to the oil cup, thin as a crescent now, and makes a small circle with his thumb to signal the errand ahead. You nod behind your wooden grin. The drums soften in friendly conspiracy, as if the square itself agrees that it is Sleep's turn to speak more than sound. The stall keeper adds a short lesson in fox voice. He advises to speak as if gossip were tea steam, and as if every question already knows the answer but wants to be walked home. You try it. Con. And the mask practically purrs. Someone laughs the way a reed laughs with the river. The teacher asks the students to listen to the insects and play the pattern they hear. The crickets present a thesis on patience. The drums respect the peer review. A firefly lands on your sleeve, proofs your timing, and lifts off like a comma looking for its claws. Beyond the square, a flute begins, one thin line of sound that could thread a needle in moonlight. It travels along the eaves and into your ears like something you mustn't spill. The fox face loves this. You follow Coma toward the mask stall to return your borrowed self, but the keeper shoos you back for one more round. He claims fox brings luck to timing, which is hard to argue with when the teacher and the firefly both nod, and even the lion mask pretends to roar in approval. For a brief, excellent minute, everything arranges itself. The drums are breaths. The flute is a ribbon. The fireflies are small, polite chandeliers. Your lantern, diminished but stubborn, is a campfire of one. And Coma is the guardian of that little sun, his sleeve a weather system trained to say yes. You make the pattern once more, quieter now, as if walking across a sleeping poem. Dum, dum, rest, dum-dum. The square holds the silence like a bowl, and in that held space you feel the city relax another notch. The teacher bows, the students bow, the masks bow by implication, and you return the fox with a pang deeper than you expected. The stall keeper swaps it for a paper charm snipped into the outline of a tail, white with 5 quick cuts for whiskers. "For joking courage," he says. You promise to use it only on consenting audiences. Coma inclines the lantern so that charm and fish meet for a moment. It feels like introducing 2 friends who will one day rescue you from a minor inconvenience, perhaps involving a stubborn knot and a sudden breeze. Drum practice drifts towards someone else's bedtime. The fireflies loosen their stitching and become regular stars again, or vanish into the shrubs to gossip. Rain, briefly rumored, decides against a second act. Koma studies the oil line and whispers the plan already floating in both your minds. Visit the papermakers for extra shade and clever folds, then reach the oil press before the watch bell tucks the streets. You tuck the new charm beside Auntie's barley sachet, a tiny pocket festival, and step with Koma into the narrow lane where papermakers keep night gently like a book.
The alley pinches to a whisper, and your lantern answers with one. The flame does a small cough, polite, embarrassed, then steadies as Koma folds his sleeve around it like a wing. Oil rides low in the cup, a thin smile pretending confidence. The paper fish inside swims more slowly, pacing itself for a longer night than promised. "We are fine," Koma says in the tone used for sleepy children who are actually fine and also not. "We'll borrow wind wisdom from the papermakers, then camellia light from the press." Rain returns as soft handwriting. It writes along the awnings and signs, adding commas where roofs meet air. You tilt your head so the foxtail charm tucked in your sleeve doesn't drink the weather. Koma slows the pace to that considerate shuffle Auntie would approve of, the one that keeps steam in cups and flame in lamps. The square with the drums fades behind you into a felt memory. Dum, dum, space, dum, dum, long breath. And the pattern moves into your ankles like a friend insisting on being helpful. The curfew bell tries on a yawn somewhere beyond the eaves. Shutters begin their evening decisions. A norin lifts its fringe as you pass and brushes your shoulder with the politeness of a bow. "Short lane," Koma murmurs, pointing to a passage flanked by stacked bamboo poles that smell like rain on ladders. The alley is narrow enough that your ribboned wrist could comb both walls at once. You keep it to yourself in case the walls are ticklish. The flame thins to a vowel, bright and small. Koma trims the wick with a pinch so gentle it feels like encouragement. The glow tucks itself lower, careful as a cat choosing a lap. A moth with graduate-level restraint orbits once and refuses enrollment. "Distinguished alumnus," you whisper. Koma swallows a laugh that would have been loud if it belonged to a different city. At the corner, a puddle gathers the world into one moon and then wobbles. Your foot tests the edge. The plank under it says in puddle language, "Perhaps not." Koma's sleeve finds your elbow, not a grip so much as a suggestion. "Remember the fisherman's advice," he says. "Compliments move currents." You nod solemnly and thank the puddle for its excellent reflections. It steadies, satisfied with the attention. The paper makers live behind a gate stencil cut with mulberry leaves. The air here carries the starch-sweet scent of pulp and the calm patience of water that has chosen a profession. That's glimmer under a roof where rain narrates in gentle italics. A woman in a work apron spots the lantern and the boy and lifts her chin in hello. She mouths, "Closing," but the word is already wrapped in kindness. Koma bows with the compressed eloquence of apprentices everywhere. He says, "Only shade, our oil plays at being immortal." She studies the flame, approves its effort, and disappears into the dim. When she returns, she carries a narrow band of washi and a reed ring. "Wind collar," she explains. Koma slips the ring over the lantern's crown. You help feed the paper down the ribs, fingers careful not to smudge the painted pine. The collar makes a little porch for the fire, a veranda for breathing. The flame approves, sitting lower, less flashy, more durable, like a good story told to a sleepy room. Koma thanks her with a nod that includes the entire trade of paper,
water, and patience, and you add your most respectful bow with the terrible suspicion that your gratitude has bedhead. She grins, wipes her hands on her apron, and shoos you towards the lane where oil presses hum. "Before the watch," she says, glancing at the bell-colored sky. "Before your quilt falls." The bell had been a quilt in Koma's telling. Now the whole city seems ready to pull it up to its chin. Past the paper yard, the market gathers itself into close sentences. A carpenter lays his tools like commas. A pickler ties her stall in knots shaped like punctuation marks for counsel rather than warning. The cat auditor appears on a stack of bundled straw, tail punctuating the air with agreeable commas. It inspects the new washi collar with the gravity of an official who once saved a district from unregulated breezes. A single approving blink is filed. You are in compliance. You offer it a phantom bow. The cat accepts, because of course you did what it was about to suggest. The oil press lane smells faintly of roasted seed and rain-washed wood. If comfort had a pantry, it would smell like this. Koma's oil cup shifts when he walks, its little moon thinner than before. But the collar helps. The flame no longer threatens to read poetry into the wind. You match Koma's steps exactly. Two-board cadence, pause at joins, shoulder angled to make a human windbreak. Not a race, he reminds the air. The air agrees, or at least fails to argue. A gust tries the corner and is met with the porch of washi that says, very politely, perhaps another time. A silhouette resolves ahead, the watchman from the river path. Damp robe, face that has negotiated treaties with weather. He sets his staff, listens with his eyes, and narrows the lane with his presence without actually moving. Koma bows. You regret every possibly unlawful heartbeat. The watchman looks at the flame, small, well-behaved, now wearing a papermaker's thoughtful scarf, and then at Koma's sleeve. He says, 3 strokes, meaning the bell. After that, quilts. His mouth tucks in a corner that might be a smile if someone told a decent joke. Make your errand walk like it knows the way. You both bow, and for a moment even the rain nods. You move on, and the alley opens into a pocket square of light. The oil seller's eaves, gutter dripping with the patience of a monk counting beads. The shutters have come down halfway, a polite suggestion rather than a barricade. Behind the counter, someone moves like a lantern walking upright. Koma lifts the lantern, and the washi collar throws a soft halo onto the wood. Almost, he murmurs, checking the cup. 1 breath of oil, perhaps 2 if you are breathtakingly modest. Then the wind arranges a small test. It slips sideways off a roof tile and tries to blow out the end of your sentence. Koma brings up his sleeve. You bring your hands around the lamp, not touching paper, just making the suggestion of a nest. The flame shrinks to the size of a listening ear. You hold still. Your barley sachet presses against your wrist with the reassuring solidarity of Auntie's kitchen. The wind finishes its mischief, decides you are not fun to tease, and goes off to bully a clothesline elsewhere. The shutter lifts a hand's height. A face appears, the kind that has counted coins fairly for 40 years and will do it 40 more if the rain continues to be interesting. We are closing, the oil seller says, and the sentence is an invitation to begin the plea you didn't realize you've been rehearsing. Koma inclines his head toward the lamp. Camellia, a thumb's worth, he says, will be as swift as a bow. The paper fish tilts, assisting with charm. You add a respectful nod, trying to look like someone who has never once wasted a drop of anything. Silence holds the lane the way a bowl holds steam. The watch bell tests a far note, not unkind, just punctual. Inside the shop, a ladle clinks against a jar. A shadow moves, and you feel the city take your side with an almost audible shrug, mark it's made to be humane. The shutter rises wider by a palm. Koma sets the lantern carefully on the counter, sleeves still shielding, the washi color doing its quiet work. The seller reaches for a small flask, and the night inhales as if relieved on your behalf. You are nearly there, oil within reach, flame surviving on patience and papermaker's geometry, when a cart rattles past and the gutter throws a last cheeky splash. A single cold drop lands on the paper roof and slides, harmless, down the outer ribs. The collar holds. Koma blinks once, as if finishing a line of calligraphy. The seller's hand steady. The ladle dips. Camellia waits with the warm, nut-soft smell of rescue.
The ladle dips and rises, and camellia pours like a thought finishing itself. It smells faintly of nuts and clean wood, and the seller holds the stream as steady as a monk's breath. Koma tips the lantern with a practiced tilt, mouth a straight, respectful line. The washi collar makes a quiet porch and receives the oil without spilling a single syllable. The little moon in the cup fattens, then rounds, then gleams. The flame, which has been pretending to be brave, decides it truly is. It stands up taller, modestly, the way a good student does when called upon. The seller wipes the ladle with a twist of cloth and sets it down like punctuation at the end of an honest sentence. He produces a folded fan, not for air, but as a counting tool, and opens it 3 ribs wide. "This much patience," he says, indicating the measure you just received. He closes 1 rib. "This much discount for courtesy." No haggling, no theatrics, just a trimmed breath of generosity because you arrived soft-footed and on time. Koma bows exactly the number of coins that discount implies, which is 2, 1 for the saving of a night, 1 for the saving of his pride as apprentice. The coins are copper on a thin cord, warm from his sleeve. They clink in the bowl like polite raindrops. You lay a cracker, rescued from the poet's payment, beside the coins. "For your tea," you offer, because barter in this market often includes the idea of comfort. The seller's eyebrows perform the smallest fan of their own, opening 1 rib's worth in private delight. He gestures with the folded fan again, teaching as he totals. Fan fully closed means we are done speaking numbers. Half open means there is a thought on the table. 3 ribs means gratitude is already included. You practice, folding a breeze you are not making, and your hands pick up the grammar at once. The foxtail charm peeks from your sleeve like a co-conspirator who's good at math. Koma slides the lantern back to the counter's edge and shows the oil level to the seller, a small transparency ritual. The seller nods, then nods again lower, a signature you will see repeated around the market when people want to say, "We understood each other and it stayed easy." He flicks a bead of oil from the ladle tip to the gutter, and the bead lands with a sound you could call clear. "For luck," he says. "Luck likes clean starts." The watch bell far off approves by not ringing, which is sometimes the most helpful thing bells can do. Receipt time is paper and ink, but again the fan is involved. The seller opens a drawer, brings out a narrow slip of washi stamped with a pine, a cousin of your lantern's painted branch, and lays it on the counter. "Name," he asks, which here means, how will you remember this moment later? Koma gestures to you. You write a character the poet taught you, the simplest for light, drawn like a whisper standing upright. The brush from the fan scribe's stall is still in your finger's memory,
the stroke lands true enough to pass. The seller admires it with the seriousness given to docks and bridges. "Good light," he says. "Travel well." He dusts the ink with a pinch of sand, shakes once, and folds the receipt into a tiny fan. "If the wind disobeys," he advises, "hold this behind the flame, and it will remember its manners." The shutter lowers an inch in gratitude. In this market, doors bow too. You're already turning when Koma remembers the debt he owes the papermaker for the wind collar. The woman had waved away payment with a smile that said, "We have to live together, don't we?" So this requires a different kind of bargaining, the kind that dresses itself as thanks. "Return," Koma murmurs, and you step back into the rain-lettered lane where the cat auditor has resumed duty on the straw stack, tail punctuating every thought. The papermaker's yard is quieter now. That's covered, paddles rinsed, the rain reading slowly from a book it likes. She meets you under the eaves, hands raw with honest work. Koma raises the lantern so its little sun can make the proper bow. The collar's edge glows like a thin moon. "Perfect porch," you say, and she accepts the compliment without deflecting it, the way a well-built roof accepts snow. Koma offers coins. She slides them back with the palm-down motion that in this city means, "We will not count." So you change tactics. You bring out the folded receipt fan from the oil cellar and hold it behind the flame. The light behaves beautifully, as if demonstrating the fan's promise. "A shared trick," you propose. "Oil's fan for paper's porch." Her grin arrives like a lantern catching on the first try. She reaches for a long strip of washi and, for your benefit, teaches the hush rituals of folds the paper people use. First, the windbreak fold. 2 small mountains, 1 valley, making a scalloped edge that interrupts mischief without lecturing it. Then the rain gutter, a single narrow trough along the lower rib to escort drops away. "Courtesy," she says, "even to water." Finally, the apology fold, which she makes by tucking one corner under another so the seam faces whoever did the waiting. "When you arrive after quilts," she adds, borrowing Koma's metaphor, "this corner says the rest of you came earlier in spirit." You practice with a scrap. Your thumbs learn the patience of mulberry fiber. The folded piece sits in your palm like a calm animal. Negotiation here is conducted in nods and textures. You try the market's unspoken phrases. 2 slow nods for acceptance, 1 shallow nod for "almost, but help me be brief," a sideways tilt for "I understand your reason and also rain." The papermaker answers with her own set. A fingertip to the porch for "We're neighbors," a tap to the folded trough for "Your respect reached here," and a small open palm for "We are finished. May our sleep be steady." Koma watches, pleased, as if you're both playing lantern charades and finally nailing the difficult cards. The watchman appears at the lane mouth and does a full professional scan. He takes in Koma's lifted sleeve, your practiced fan-fold grip, the oil seller's shutter resting lower, the papermaker's emptied vats, the cat's finished comma. He gives a minimal nod, the municipal version of a lullaby, and taps his staff once to mark nothing more urgent than bedtime. "Rain will behave," he remarks, to no one in particular, which is exactly the forecast you needed. On impulse, you offer the papermaker one of the poet's crackers, the last of the crunchy meter. She breaks it, hands half to Koma, and the 3 of you share what tastes like a secret that isn't hiding. "For paper," she says, as if toasting the night's most patient hero. "For oil," Koma replies, as if toasting breath. You lift your half.
For fans, you add, thinking of the folded receipt, the nod grammar, the masks watching practice, the way the market keeps cooling hot moments without dousing them. Coin finally changes hands, but only after you request a single extra reed ring to carry in your sleeve in case the wind tries jokes. She lets you overpay in the smallest possible way, one additional coin, a bow extra deep, and this is the quiet bargain that satisfies everyone's sense of balance. The papermaker ties the ring to your ribbon with a soft knot that promises to remember you after you leave. More porches, fewer storms, she wishes, which is exactly the kind of blessing that keeps bone and lamp aligned. Lantern fed, porch fitted, fanfold learned, you and Coma re-enter the vein of the market that still glows. The night seems to have widened its shoulders to carry you easier. The flame sits steady, a good guest who knows the house rules. Somewhere back near the drums, the students box up their rhythms. In the tea house, Auntie probably pours the kettle's last soft breath. At the river, your candle boat rides the curve like a note held longer than expected. Rain inhales and seems poised to speak more fully. You tilt the new reed ring in your fingers, tuck it beside Auntie's barley, and let the lantern lead, poised to discover how the market breathes when the sky decides to sing.
Rain chooses a voice and speaks in it. Soft syllables on every awning rib, a silver murmur in the gutters, a hush across the square. Awnings creak as ropes tighten. Bamboo poles settle into their night posture with the satisfaction of old knees finding the right cushion. The market doesn't panic. It edits. Lanterns shift a handspan inward, mats are rolled to the dry quarter, and shoulders lower like rice stalks, agreeing with the wind. Incense, which has been politely minding its own business, decides to bloom. The first breath of aloes wood steps out like a librarian who knows all the answers and none of the drama. The second breath is sandalwood, round as a warm bowl. The third is something green and lemony that brushes the back of your throat and says, "Sleep will be easy later." You and Coma tuck beneath a pickler's eave, the washy color making a small veranda of calm around the lamp. The stall is a watercolor of jars, cucumbers the color of river reeds, daikon moons, plums like well-behaved sunsets. The pickler, a man with laugh lines deep enough to hold rain, offers a sliver of ginger with the solemnity of a treaty. You bite. It is sweet and bright and entirely convinced it can fix history. Cures wet spirits, he claims, then adds, and conversations that turn in circles, glancing kindly toward no one in particular. Coma pretends not to take a second piece. He does. A gust slips past the gutter and flicks two impolite fingers at your flame, but Coma is faster. Sleeve up, fan slip behind the lantern, the tiny receipt from the oil shop opening 3 ribs like an umbrella made of manners. The flame keeps its cool, a small singer behind a screen. Fans are fluent in weather, he says, pleased that the papermaker's porch and the oil seller's fan are now pen pals. Rain taps harder for a short paragraph, then edits itself down to commas again. The pickler tells mild jokes in a voice you want to wrap around soup. He points at each jar like introducing old friends at a reunion. This one remembers the first plum it ever met. This one forgives a heavy hand with salt. This one is shy until you serve it with rice. He lets you spear a cucumber coin and a daikon crescent. You feel the crunch travel up your arm and tidy your thoughts. The cat auditor arrives, shakes a paw like a magistrate relieved of mud, and selects the daikon platoon as its new jurisdiction. It accepts a ceremonial sniff of your lantern, then parks itself with its tail curled like punctuation. Under the neighboring eave, an incense seller rearranges charcoal and a shallow censer, breath pluming like soft smoke beside the real thing. A tray of sticks, aloes wood, sandalwood, and that green lemon storyteller leans under a rain-slicked board. He raises 2 fingers toward your lamp. "Borrow a dawn?" he asks, meaning a kiss aflame. Koma checks the tatch and the low ceramic roof of the censer. "Thumb width only," he cautions, apprentice code for safety first. You shelter the lantern with fan and sleeve. The incense takes a polite sip of fire and glows with the patience of a monk counting beans. The new smoke steps under your awning, bows to the pickle jars, and sits down beside your flame like an old friend who knows where the cups are kept. A drip discovers a seam in the awning and begins its campaign to land on your lamp. You relocate under a beam that remembers not to leak. The pickler, with the precise hospitality of this city, moves a jar to make space. His youngest, sleeves too long for today but perfect for next season, offers you a tiny square of oiled paper. "Roof for your pocket," she announces. You slip it over Auntie's barley sachet, and the sachet, now under its own umbrella, seems to hum a warm thank you from your sleeve. Rain is now a concert you can hum along to. Vendors answer with their own instruments. Ropes squeak, lids clack, ladles tasting their echoes against bowls. The incense seller, newly kindled, places a stick at the edge of your awning so the breeze can coach it. The scent finds your lantern and decides to sit with it a while. For a moment, the flame and the smoke perform a duet, one vertical, one wandering, both unambitious about applause. Koma watches like a proud stagehand. "The city loves small collaborations," he murmurs. "Everyone keeps their volume, but the song is shared." The watch bell tries one courteous stroke, a preface rather than a decree. Curfew will float down, but it is in no hurry to find you. The pickler begins tying the night in place with sleepy knots, the kind Auntie prefers, quick, respectful, easily undone by morning. You and Koma help by bearing a line steady while he loops and tucks. He teaches the knot that means "see you soon" instead of farewell. It feels like folding the word later into chord. The cat supervises, then stamps the rope with a paw that may or may not contain invisible ink. 2 umbrellas bloom at the lane's mouth, shepherding damp friends who smell of peppery laughter. They order plums and a bag of cucumber moons, then share rain rumors. A paper theater 2 lanes over is performing to an audience of puddles, and a noodle stall is steaming like a politely erupting mountain. You promise to visit both in the lifetime where you are not being escorted by an apprentice keeping a small son alive. "Save the sons first," one says, pointing at your lamp. The other raises a plum in salute. They vanish into weather the way sentences vanish into memory. Another gust rehearses mischief. This time you try the papermaker's apology fold with a scrap of washi. You hold the folded bit behind the collar, and the drip that had ambitions for the rim slides off, diverted by courtesy. "Apologies are excellent engineers," Koma notes, as if quoting a proverb that only lanterns know. The incense seller rewards the experiment with a pinch of ash to dust your fan. It glides smoother, its ribs whispering through air like a secret with perfect timing. Your foxtail charm peeks from your sleeve and pretends it suggested the whole operation. The rain's edges soften. Each drop arrives later to its own appointment. The pickler wraps a parcel for you, 3 small pickles in a folded leaf tied with a reed.
payment for your rope holding and your company. For the road between breaths, he says. Koma tucks it away with the careful pride of someone entrusted with a snack that might also be a metaphor. You inhale the incense once more. The green lemon note has mellowed into something that sounds like cedar counseling an orchard. A second stroke of the bell travels through the lane, not loud, just definite. The market tightens its cardigan. The pickler bows you out into the softened rain, and the incense seller lifts his censer so its smoke can draw a blessing on your path. Flame keeps ears, smoke keeps stories, he says, a benediction that makes your feet feel smarter. The cap escorts you to the gutter, decides it has fulfilled its civic duty, and returns to the daikon with an air of promotion. Koma lifts the lantern higher and turns his shoulder to the breeze. You mirror a two-person screen. The washi porch, the reed ring, the fan's three-ribbed grammar, all the tricks you collected work like a choir humming under the melody. Ahead, cedar eaves part to reveal the low roof of a shrine compound, the kind with a hearth that remembers entire winters. Warm hands, steady wick, Koma says, and it sounds like a password. The bell will make its final sentence soon, and you, smelling faintly of ginger and smoke, step into the rain's gentler script, towards a flame that knows how to welcome smaller flames home.
The shrine receives you with cedar breath and floorboards that know where to hold quiet. Rain lowers its voice at the gate, as if the vermilion lintel posted a polite request, and the air under the eaves is warm with a memory of winters. Koma's lantern draws a soft ellipse on the gravel, the washi porch casting its little moon shadow, the paper fish inside doing a dignified, slow swim. Beyond a reed screen, a hearth glows, banked coals, a pot that doesn't boil so much as think. You slip off your sandals and your soles remember the grammar of wood. Step, yield, hush. Ash settles like fine snow along the iron rim. Somewhere a drip finds cedar and decides to be polite about it. Your sleeve carries a chorus of the night, ginger, sandalwood, barley, rain, and the lamp carries a heart the size of a patient pea. A monk appears with the composure of steam leaving a cup. His robe is the color of good soil after rain, his hands the kind that have trimmed more wicks than you have had excuses. He bows to you both, equal in depth to the bow he gives the flame, and in that equality the room chooses calm again. Koma sets the lantern on a low stand at the height of a respectful knee. The flame, proud from surviving alleys and clever gusts, suddenly remembers it is small. It flutters once, like a shy singer caught accepting applause. Without touching the paper, the monk cups his left hand to shape the air, then makes a lesson of his right. House, sleeve, river, he murmurs, each word landing like a cushion. The house, fingers pitched together like a roof with a little attic for breath. The sleeve, forearm raised to invite a draft to detour. The river, both hands low, giving wind something graceful to do besides mischief. You try them in order. Koma mirrors you with apprentice neatness. The flame approves by forgetting to twitch. The washi porch glows a shade steadier, like a moon reassured by cloud that knows its job. He slides the cedar screen a hand's width so the hearth steps closer, amber and patient. With bamboo tweezers, he lifts the soot cap from the wick, only the delicate charcoal blossom that makes a flame moody, and lays that crumb by the coals, where it glows once and joins warmth in general. Wicks like humility, he says, a sentence perfectly balanced between proverb and housekeeping.
He tips the camellia cup a hair. The oil remembers roundness and settles. Bowls, lamps, people, he adds, prefer level. Your fingers itch to help, so he gives you a job sized correctly for tonight. Hold the receipt fan from the oil shop half open, 3 ribs, for exactly the length of 1 in-breath, a listening pause, and 1 out-breath. You do. Air reshapes around your little choreography. The flame blossoms a degree brighter, not taller, but calmer, the way a voice grows richer when it stops hurrying. Coma watches the wick with a concentration normally reserved for bridges and medicine. The paperfish casts a swimmer's shadow across the stand and flicks invisible water from its tail. Ash has collected along the rim like stubborn commas. The monk brushes them away with a foxtail whisk. Congratulations to your sleeve charm for manifesting cousins. And the lantern inhales like a room with a newly opened window. He checks the reed ring you tucked earlier. A thumb's pressure tightens the knot in a way that says, I will remember you, even if the wind forgets its manners. Auntie's barley sachet hums faintly against your wrist under its oiled paper umbrella, as if approving the improved ventilation plan. Because hospitality belongs to breath as much as to guests, the monk sets 3 cups near the coals, barley tea, not quite steaming. Auntie has cousins everywhere. You warm your hands. Coma warms his sleeve edge so the paper keeps supple. The monk warms nothing and everything at once. He asks nothing about your errands, the fan grammar, the apology fold, the pickler's jokes, but the room feels as if it has read your day and underlined the kind parts. On a lacquer panel, a painted carp grins like someone who appreciated your river compliments. You take it as encouragement to keep being ridiculous when the world is listening. The watch bell strokes the air with 1 courteous knuckle. 2 behind you now, the 3rd preparing its quilt. The monk hears it and smiles without teeth. We will tuck against it, he says, and shows you a final fold, the hearth-keeper's kinch. With thumb and forefinger, he lifts the lower rim a breath so stray drips run along the outside rib and down. Courtesy to water, you say, remembering the papermaker's trough. And courtesy to fire, he answers, weighing the lamp in his palm until the wick sits in the sweet middle of oil and air. The flame, wearing its humility like a small crown, agrees to be strong and not showy. He invites practice. Step and turn, step and pause. River hand low, sleeve hand ready, house roof above if a curious breeze leans in. You and Coma do the slow dance of caretaking around the hearth, commas keeping a long sentence readable. The lamp rides your palm like a tamed thought. Your wrist ribbon catches the glow and returns it softly. The paper fish swims its orbit with the dignity of a veteran guide. Somewhere in your sleeve, barley rustles and decides to remember this warmth for later. A novice pads in, reed sandals that you hear only because the room allows it, and places 2 narrow cedar screens near the threshold, making a hallway for air to learn manners before it meets flame. Bridges for breezes, the monk says, amused. He demonstrates a watchman greeting. Set the lamp not too low, the ground drink smells, and not too high, pride trips, and then turn the wick a whisper toward the person you're speaking with so your light includes them without interrogating their face. You try it once, Coma twice. The lamp looks pleased to be consulted. For mischief's sake, the rain tests the eaves with a sideways sigh. The screens make a gentle vowel. You raise the fan 3 ribs. Coma lifts his sleeve into the river shape. The flame does not so much as blink. There, your lamp knows home, the monk says. It is not magic, and yet it feels like the kind of spell that uses attention instead of thunder. Membranes, margins, and steering without grabbing. He sets a slip of paper by the stand, a tiny ink mark shaped like the character for listen, only rounder, like a seed that has decided to become patience. You bow to the hearth and to the hands that taught your hands. Koma bows deeper, pride recalibrated to the level that lets sleep in later without negotiation. The monk slides the reed screen a palm's width so the night can admire the lesson's end. Outside, incense from somewhere else edits the rain. The square smells like clean stories. The bell holds a beat longer than expected, as if allowing your exit to be unhurried. You lift the lantern. The porch glows. The oil is a steady moon, and the wick wears its humility with style. At the threshold, the lane is already changing its mind into ceremony, lanterns drifting white, then pale blue, borne by robed figures who walk like sentences with no punctuation yet. A leader lifts a wand of bells that chime only when invited. You and Koma pause, not yet part of them, but close enough to feel their tide. The monk raises 2 fingers in blessing, a tiny fan that says, "Walk kindly," and your lamp answers with a composed, newly confident bloom, ready to travel through a night that now knows your name.
The procession gathers itself from mist and sandal sound, white lanterns drifting like moons that have decided walking is better than floating. Bells stitched to a bamboo wand give 1 silver syllable and then rest, as if measuring everyone's pulse for comfort. You and Koma pause at the shrine threshold, then are gently collected by the tide. No push, just a widening of space that invites your feet. Robes move like quiet rivers. Sleeves keep their own weather. Your lamp, newly calm from the hearth lesson, hums like a small singer who knows the chorus by heart. A steward approaches with a bundle of thin paper crescents. "Moon faces," he murmurs, offering one to you with 2 hands, the way gifts prefer to travel. The mask is a light circle, reed frame, washi brushed with diluted silver. He fits it to your brow and secures it with a soft cord. The world narrows into a rounder calm. Edges blur. Sounds travel as if carried in bowls. He tilts the mask a thumb width higher, smooths the cord behind your ear, and smiles. "Now you are exactly the right kind of moon," he says, and your lamp agrees with a modest bloom. The line of lanterns moves. Koma finds your elbow, not gripping, simply calibrating your pace to the procession's long breath. The leader raises the wand. The bells speak in measured commas. The bearers of the little palanquin step together. 2, float. 2, float. You mirror them without argument. The papermaker's porch deflects a cross breeze. The oil seller's receipt fan, half open in your other hand, waits like a polite umbrella of air. The paper fish inside your lamp makes a slow, satisfied turn, as if it knows this route by memory. A child at the edge of the lane attempts a wink with both eyes at once. You return the ambitious gesture and almost shoulder a bearer. An official, face kind, eyebrows busy, slides 2 fingers under your mask and straightens it, rescuing an unruly syllable. "Keep your horizon level," he whispers, mock solemn. You adjust your shoulders. Your wrist ribbon catches the lantern glow and returns it, muted and friendly. Koma swallows a laugh that otherwise would wake a sleeping roof tile, and your lamp, properly included, travels with a steady, unshowy flame.
At the first bend, a gust tries for legend. Sleeves lift in the practiced river shape. You raise your fan 3 ribs. Koma makes a house with his free hand. The monk's geometry blooms across 20 bodies at once. The larger lanterns sway but do not falter. Yours leans, listens, and decides to remain itself. Someone in the crowd murmurs, "Good manners," meaning the fire. The bells give a single nod of approval. The wind, failing to become famous, goes off to pester a confident umbrella. Between torti, the ground changes from gravel's hush to plank soft talk, so the procession alters its stride. You follow, a beat late, and then exactly on time. At the far end, a flute threads a line over the bells, the note you heard at drum practice, now more moon than reed. The foxtail charm in your sleeve seems to feather your wrist in approval. The night smells of cedar smoke rinsed with rain. Behind the mask, the air tastes faintly sweet, as if the city put honey on its vowels for the occasion. The steward returns, bestowing willow sprays. He tucks one behind your mask cord, then pauses, studies your lamp, and moves the spray to the other side so the leaves trail away from flame. "We keep our friends separated," he jokes softly. "Water here, fire there." Noticing your fan, he turns it 1 rib narrower. 3 means gratitude. 2 means listening. You practice both. The mask's round sight makes simple intelligence feel ceremonial. Koma's sleeve maintains the river hand, ready to steer mischief toward better hobbies. For a few heartbeats, you forget you are a visitor. The palanquin breathes. The bells mark the rests. You step when everyone steps, as though you had rehearsed for months. Then a small muddle. An usher waves new arrivals into the line, and you, obeying politeness, drift left. Suddenly, an extra shoulder where the priests expect space. The busy-browed official slides in like a comma rescuing a sentence. Palms out, smiling. He straightens your mask once more, this time with a wink of moonlight in his eyes. "Visiting constellation," he murmurs. The joke Koma made earlier returned by the city itself, and he guides you to the safer edge beside the musicians. You and Koma relocate, lantern still part of the river of light, now with a little room to breathe. The procession crosses a small bridge, arched, slick with honest rain, and the bearers shorten their steps. You recall the drum pattern, dum, dum, rest, dum dum, and let your feet remember the homework. The bridge answers with a deeper dock, pleased. Downstream, candle boats on the camo turn with the current. One wobbles, rights itself, and glides on, as if a carp remembered your compliments and decided to escort it. At the far side, an elder with a bell rod and the serenity of 1,000 quilts raises a palm in greeting. He leans close enough that you smell cedar and rain in his robe, then tugs the cord of your moon mask so the knot rests in the hollow that will not chafe. "There," he says, voice like a warm floor. "You will remember tomorrow where night touched your temple." He checks Koma's sleeve posture, approves the reed ring at the lantern crown, and taps your fan with one finger. "Listening suits you," he adds, and the bells behind him agree with a small, content chime. The lane opens into a square washed clean. In the center, a brazier burns low, fed by cedar slivers. Acolytes dip willow sprays and lift them steaming, punctuation made of mist. An usher offers you a tiny wooden tag, no writing, just the grain running like a river.
Carry this, he suggests, so your footsteps have company. You tuck it beside Auntie's barley sachet. The pocket choir gains a cedar voice. Someone presses a rice sweet into Koma's free hand. He breaks it in half without ceremony, and you share the soft, sesame warmth between steps. A bell's third sentence lifts itself beyond the roofs. Curfew isn't a scold, it's a blanket. The procession loosens into doorways and side lanes, light walking itself home. A steward touches your elbow, and with the politest arc of his hand draws a path that slides you clear without cutting any thread. Moon returns to sky, he whispers, and his fingers find the knot at your temple, loosening it with the gentleness of a story choosing where to end. He straightens the mask once more, because thorough kindness enjoys symmetry, then lifts it away and cups the paper with both palms as if setting a cloud back among its friends. You bow, he bows deeper, and the bells answer with a last courteous breath. Koma lifts your lantern, steady as a seasoned thought, and the two of you step from the seam back into the market's softer corridors. A breeze trails the willow leaves you still carry. Somewhere a watchman, satisfied, lets his staff rest a little heavier on the ground. The moon looks ordinary again, good ordinary, and you realize you have been smiling the way people smile when everyone around them knows the same song. Ahead, stalls yawn toward closing. The silk couple have left a narrow ribbon folded for you. A poet's fresh strip flutters like a bird deciding which pocket to love. The pickler lifts two fingers that mean, "Don't forget the parcel." Tokens and notes begin to gather, like gentle punctuation around a sentence you will soon finish slowly, with bows. Koma's eyes, bright behind apprentice calm, say what his voice does not hurry to. Almost time for unhurried farewells, the kind that leave a light burning for your return.
You and Koma move back into the market's softer corridors, where closing time wears slippers. The silk couple stand by their bolts as if escorting guests to a gate. Their daughter holds a narrow band of plum silk that remembers moonlight. She ties it over your wrist ribbon with the knot you learned at the pickler's, "See you soon, not farewell," and tucks in a thread of pine so the bow smells faintly like rain that made good choices. The silk husband gives Koma a nod that means, "Your flame walked kindly among fragile things." The lantern answers by being the exact size of gratitude. The poet spots you mid-shudder and waves a brush like a small flag. He has folded a strip of washi into an accordion, each panel a breath. On the first he's written your repaired river, on the last a quick fox with whiskers that clearly studied under your charm. He dusts the ink with patience, stamps it with his nap-happy seal, and presses the booklet into your palm. "For pockets that like sentences," he says. He slips a spare cracker to Koma and pretends not to notice Koma failed to pretend not to be thrilled. "Read one fold at a time when the night gets longer than it needs to be," he adds, shutting his inkstone with a click that sounds like a bow. Two stalls down, the pickler hands you the parcel you held the rope for: cucumber coins, daikon moons, and a plum with a secret smile. He has wrapped them in a leaf and tied them with reed so neat the knot could get a job teaching knots. He adds a slice of ginger that believes in everyone's better nature. "For the road that happens between two deep breaths," he repeats, "a store policy you hope spreads?" His youngest salutes with an oiled paper square, the little roof she issued earlier, and pockets the cat's paw in both hands to keep it from stamping unauthorized documents. The cat objects by purring like distant rain. The incense seller extinguishes his charcoal the way you might tell a story to bed, gently with a last soft flourish. He sets one thin stick in the crook of your lantern's reed ring, unlit just for company, and wafts a spoon of scented smoke toward you. For good neighbors inside sleeves, he says, blessing Auntie's barley sachet, the cedar tag from the procession, the reed ring, the poet's booklet, the silk thread, and the foxtail charm which peeks out like a celebrity trying and failing to be anonymous. For a moment you feel wildly overprepared for tranquility. Everywhere, sleepy knots appear. A weaver's apprentice loops twine around shutter pegs with the grace of someone tying up an uneventful day. A brush seller straightens bristles to point toward tomorrow. A noodle cook lays chopsticks like the rungs of a dream you can climb down from. Coma raises the lantern so knots can see what they're becoming. You hold cords steady as vendors tuck and pull. Leftover right is quick to forgive, one woman says, demonstrating. Right over left keeps secrets better, another counters. You opt for leftover right. Secrets can have the night off. At the papermaker's gate, that's sleeping under boards, she steps from shadow with a grin already halfway to remembered. In her poem, a tiny sachet of mulberry thread ends and a reed splinter tied like a microscopic broom. For dusting away unhelpful thoughts, she says. The threads like to be asked to clean up. You promise to be politely bossy with anxieties. She touches your lantern's washy porch with one fingertip, an inspector's kiss, then signs the air with a gesture that might be the character for quiet if quiet wore comfortable shoes. The watchman rounds a corner, staff making the patient syllable of bedtime on wood. His frown has retired to a warmer climate. He admires the reed ring, the level oil, the modest wick, and the porch that keeps rain from conducting interviews it hasn't scheduled. Walk home like you've already arrived, he suggests, municipal poetry at its finest. Coma repeats the monk's river-hand house roof sleeve weather. The watchman offers a small nod that clocks out the last of your worry. Back near the tea house, Auntie has already lowered her reed blinds, but she's left a barley envelope tucked string side out under the frame, initials inked for you. Coma clears his throat, the polite way of not reading your mail for you, and you tuck the envelope beside your other sachet. You slide a thank you under the door in the only currency she respects, a folded note that promises a visit and a story, and 2 coins that claim they're just keeping the note from traveling. From inside, the bell rings its tiny, of course. You imagine her hand hovering over 3 cups, setting one aside for the lamp. Your pockets feel like a quiet parade. Your sleeves sound like a library. Tokens and notes make a soft arithmetic around your ribs. Silk, paper, reed, cedar, barley, fox, poem, pickle, incense. Proof that care can be carried without being heavy. You consider the old problem of nights that end too fast for hearts and too slowly for feet. The market solves it by handing you things that continue to be themselves when you're gone. Memories with jobs, Coma says when you tell him this, and you nod like someone who just discovered cabinets. He wants help at one last stall, a brush table that needs its brushes to sleep in grain, not against it. The seller shows you the angle, bristles down to dream in a jar rimmed with sand, handles aligned as if discussing patient philosophy. You assist until the last brush sighs. Payment appears as a sliver of inkstone wrapped in paper for emergencies of definition, a gift that feels extravagant and weighs less than a sigh. You tuck it beside the poet's book, perhaps they will elope. The bell composes its third sentence, not loud, simply done with outlines. The quilts come down, gates, shutters, voices. The river keeps talking in italics. You and Coma step back to the lane where the market has become the memory of itself in real time. He checks the oil with a glance that has upgraded from apprentice worry to apprentice stewardship. The moon in the cup is steady. The paper fish swims once around, then rests as if it has found a friendly current inside. You promise aloud to the silk daughter's careful bow, to the poet's fox, to the pickler's ginger, to the papermaker's porch, to Auntie's barley and bell, to the watchman's staff, to the monk's river hand, that you will find your way here again by the slow route. Coma doesn't make you swear. The market has already believed you. He raises the lantern, and the lane leans gently toward the bridge where morning keeps its first yes. The city breathes in, breathes out. You help it close the last knot, tuck the last bow, and carry the small, calm sun that will see you over the water.
Dawn arrives like ink washing itself thinner. The rain has already told its last polite story, and the sky decides to practice being blue. You and Coma follow the lane that has learned to whisper, past shutters tied with sleepy knots and eaves that smell faintly of cedar and steam. The market breathes out, a long, satisfied exhale, as if someone just fluffed all the pillows. Your lantern's washy porch glows the pale color of rice water. The oil sits level and calm. The wick wears its humility like morning knows how. The paper fish inside makes a final unhurried lap, as if saying, "This current has been friendly." The bridge waits, boards slick enough to deserve respect, but warmed by first light. You step onto it, and the wood answers with that remembered toque, gentler than at dusk, as though it too has slept well. The kamo moves in sentences you can read. Riffle, smooth, riffle. Each line underlined by the small, steady reflections of lanterns being carried home. Far downstream, a handful of candle boats still wander like thoughtful thoughts. You catch yourself whispering the compliment to a carp you can't see, and, because you've learned how this city behaves, you do not find it odd when the river replies with an especially dignified ripple. Coma's sleeve still holds its river shape without trying. The reed ring sits true on the crown. The extra fan in your hand is folded to 2 ribs, the listening measure. He looks the way reliable looks. House, sleeve, river, he reminds you, grinning a little, and you realize you've been holding them in your own bones since the hearth lesson. Your ribboned wrist keeps pace with the bridge's rhythm. Auntie's barley hums softly in your sleeve, under its tiny roof. The cedar tag from the procession rests like a friendly spine, and the foxtail charm pretends absolutely not to be proud of anything. Halfway across, the watchman leans against the parapet, staff now a mere suggestion. His face is a geography of approvals. He raises 2 fingers in a small fan that means safe passage and breakfast. Walk home like you've already arrived, he repeats, and morning nods along. The bell, finished with quilts, says nothing at all, which is the loudest blessing it knows. Coma bows to the day, you bow to the bridge accepts both bows with artisan dignity. On the far bank, a low eave and a wide doorway open onto a room where lanterns hang like moons on hooks. It smells of dry paper, clean oil, bamboo, and the faintest memory of last night's incense. A shelf holds reed rings and spare collars. A jar keeps wicks rolled to the shy thickness of careful candles. A brush lies on a stone with enough ink left on it to write one more good word. Koma's teacher, a woman with the weathered hands of someone who has loaned light to 1,000 evenings, looks up from trimming a tired wick and smiles with her whole day. She bows to you, to Koma, to the lamp, to the porch, in that order, as though greeting a quartet. Koma reports without speeches. A papermaker's porch, an oil seller's measure, a monk's geometry, a watchman's patience, a river's compliments, a fox-mask's timing, an incense neighbor's borrowing, a pickler's jokes, a poet's reckless sincerity, a tea-house's barley that knows everyone's name. His teacher listens as if cataloging new constellations. "And the wind?" she asks, eyes at the crown. Koma tilts the lantern so the washi collar shows its neat apology fold, and the reed ring's simple, steadfast knot. The teacher checks oil level, wick shape, and your hands, how they hover without grabbing, how they shelter without smothering. "Very good," she says to it all, and the room feels as if someone just set down a tray of warm bread. You are not ready to let go, which is how you know it's time to. Koma lifts the lamp by its bamboo handle, and for a breath you both carry it, the trade between palms so smooth it feels like a sentence finishing itself. He hangs it among its gentle siblings. The flame bows, then closes its eye without drama, a singer stepping off stage because the song is complete. The paper fish settles against a rib as if it has found its shelf in a library. The washi porch keeps its shape. The room makes a satisfied sound that only paper knows how to make.
Tokens ask to be acknowledged. You oblige. You tuck the poet's accordion into a safer pocket. Check the silk daughter's knot. Make sure the cedar tag rests where it won't poke, and share the pickler's ginger slice with Koma, because courage can be breakfast. In exchange, you set the oil seller's folded receipt fan on the workbench, a small thank you to the guild, alongside a tiny scribble with your ink sliver, a rounder "listen," seat-shaped, to keep the room company. The teacher taps the mark once, approving the idea of a guest who leaves something useful instead of merely sentimental. The door drinks air and makes a new morning. Koma steps beside you under the eaves, and for a heartbeat you stand there not speaking, the best kind of conversation. "You are a good citizen of the night," he says, "which may be the highest honor this market gives." You answer by pointing at his sleeve, river hand already in the right place even without a flame. He bows. You bow lower. He bows lower still, until you're both laughing softly at the ceremony, which seems exactly right at this hour. You walk back to the bridge for the pleasure of crossing it again. The city wakes like a careful page being turned. Distant shutters lift. A baker coughs into a warm hand. Someone sweeps the same stubborn corner for the 1,000th time and enjoys the 1,000th small, satisfying hush. Birds practice vowels. The river keeps speaking in italics, which you will privately translate later when you need it. Your pockets carry their quiet parade. Your steps carry a rhythm the drums taught your ankles. Your breath carries steam from barley you haven't yet brewed. On the highest plank, you look back once. Markets look larger when they're resting. The torii prints a neat rectangle of day. The shrine cedar exhales. A cat sits on authority and observes fish that are not present. If you squint, you can almost see the lantern you carried, asleep in its row, and the paper fish dreaming of currents that behave. "See you soon," your silk knot whispers at your wrist. "Walk kindly," says the shape your hands remember. You do both at once, which turns out to be the entire trick. Koma lifts his hand, the smallest wave, and turns toward his route, where evening will eventually need a steady friend again. You turn toward yours. Morning accepts the trade. The city arranges itself into generosity, and you, lighter by one lantern and heavier with small good things, walk toward a day that has already decided to be gentle. The dawn takes your shoulders and keeps them down. Nothing urgent follows you. Your ankles remember. Dum, dum, rest. Dum, dum, long breath. You leave the bridge with hands that still know how to shelter flame even when they're empty, and a pocket choir ready to hum when night wants you back.
The bridge grows softer as you walk, each plank calm, familiar note, and the river below thins to a whisper that trails behind you like a comfortable scarf. Morning, now certain of itself, settles its light over rooftops, over signs, over sleeping stalls, and the air smooths the last small edges from your thoughts. You notice how your fingers keep the shape of the lantern's weight, a gentle curve, and how your breath has learned to move the way the watch bell spoke, slow, even, kind to everything it touches. Shoji screens brighten to a pearly milk, willow leaves hang motionless for a few long beats, and the city, so generous with its stories, seems content to let this one arrive at its quiet place. You take another step, and then another, and each simple motion asks a little less of you. The sachets in your sleeve shift, barley, cedar, the tiny reed ring, soft, well-behaved passengers, and the silk ribbon rests warm against your pulse. Somewhere, far off, a kettle begins to think about steaming. Somewhere else, a broom finishes a thoughtful path. The world is not demanding a posture from you now. It is offering a place to set things down. You let the shoulders fall, notice the jaw loosen, and tilt the head the way the stewards set your moon mask so the knot won't chafe. And the line eases twice as much as you expect. In your mind, you rehearse the smallest movements: house, sleeve, river, the polite fan that asks air to behave, the apology fold that guides a raindrop to a better choice. These are not tasks anymore, they're lullabies, and each one lengthens your blink. The market's exhale becomes your own. Lamps are sleeping in their row, the cat has assigned itself a sun patch, and a fisherman is almost certainly complimenting a carp. You do not need to follow any of them. The night did its work. The morning understands. Everything can be quieter now, and you can be quieter with it, as if your whole self were a lantern finally at rest, small flame closed, paper warm, porch still, the room around you safe and content. End of story. Sweet dreams.